Hello, everybody, and welcome to the evening routine. Number 7, I believe. Cheers. Yeah, so the evening routine is a place where I come live on YouTube so I could teach myself how to stream live using OBS, Open Broadcast Software. My inspiration comes from Ter- Terry Berenson, one of my favorite cycling YouTubers. When lockdown started in New York, he started going live almost every single morning and kind of build a cool community around it and all that. But for me, it was more probably a month ago now. Someone was asking him if he got anything out of doing the live streams, and he said, yeah, he started to have a element of his business, his videography business, doing live streams for people. So it hit me then. I'm like, oh, if my clients asked if I could do a live stream, would I be able to? And I was like, maybe I should get on that because I think even after all this weird stuff stops happening, there's still going to be a big market for that. So it's something I want to be able to offer to my clients, just like I always only did commercial photography. And then I had clients who would ask me if I could do videography, and I'm like, yeah, I can. And it's because I had put in the time making YouTube videos to be able to do that. So that's what I'm doing here. That's why I do this. Like, I love when people join and want to chat, and I'll ramble on my own if not. And my goal is to be able to learn this um, new skill set, whatever. Um, so yeah, I just got back from my anniversary dinner with Aaron. We have been together for 4 years. Um, we were over at Magic City and had some really good smoked meats and bought a 4 pack of one of our favorites, Royal Hat Society. So that's what I'm going to be drinking. Let me know what you're drinking, if you're drinking, what you got going on. It took a lot of effort for me to get this stream up again, so learned a bunch of new stuff, so it was already paying off. Hey, Alan, how's it going? Um, So this is the first time I'm streaming with my R5, camera I've had for exactly 2 weeks today, and I could already tell how brilliant it is because that autofocus is just snap on no matter what. It locks right on. It actually locks on your eye, the closest eye, and then if you move and you turn, it'll switch to locking on the head. I don't have a setup here to show you that. I plan to make some, produced videos talking about the R5 a little more. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. And so this is the first time I'm streaming with it. I actually didn't plan to stream with it, but I broke my cable that works with my Canon 5D Mark IV, and it's a different cable. Um, got a proprietary Canon HDMI on it, so I already ordered a new one. I like to be able to stream with that camera and have this camera. But yeah, so I had to figure out how to get this camera streaming, and it took me a while to figure that out. And it just turns out I was using an older version of Canon's webcam software. Hey, what's up? Aaron says I sound much better than last time. Also, you can see the mic here. I'm using a shotgun mic instead of the lavalier mic. For some reason, that sounded so bassy and muffled. Lavalier mics usually sound much better, but it was sounding horrible. So I kind of built a little stand here where the camera used to be to hold the shotgun mic, and now I have the main camera over here. I know a couple of you have been here before, so it's a different perspective. But the different perspective on the camera is because, as I was saying, I broke the cable on for the 5D4, so I don't have a long cable. I only have the USB-C, USB-C, which comes with the R5, and I couldn't reach it actually to the center spot where I used to have it. But I think it worked out for the best to have a shotgun mic and this perspective with the camera. Is that gross about the lurv? Oh, yeah, could be. So yeah, though, like I said, I didn't ever intend to stream with this camera, or at least for the immediate future, but I already enjoy streaming with it better. Got better low light performance, and then also the autofocus tracking where I know when I was filming sometimes with the Canon, I was reaching over and like trying to get the 5D4 to do what I wanted it to do. I mean, minor complaints, but still, when you switch, it's very noticeable. I've been talking a little bit this week. I don't know if you guys follow my photography page on Instagram. I did a post with the R5 and just talking about I picked up my 5D4 to take a picture of the R5 last night. And when I picked this thing up, it feels like, and I liked the way it was beefy. It felt like it weighed a ton. And then when the mirror snapped, I'm like, 2 weeks. and this felt like a dinosaur. It's amazing. I've always been a huge proponent of this being the most like underrated DSLR of all time. And I think it might go down in history as the best DSLR of all time, but it's just been completely supplanted by a new technology and the fine machining and not having a mirror box and that kind of mechanical stuff. So it's amazing how already in 2 weeks pick this up and it feels like, oh wow, that's, you know, something older. But again, you know, you don't know until you try something else and it doesn't matter. Like I always made this work, and in the first couple weeks with the R5, I felt some annoying things that I was missing from this. And I didn't realize till I went back to it. I'm like, maybe it's just a learning curve and I don't really miss this as much as I thought I did. So just about getting the R5 set up right, I think. And a big part of it has been making custom modes. So if I'm shooting in the studio, if I'm shooting landscapes, I could have the R5 act more like a 5D4, more like a DSLR, because all the fancy autofocus and tracking and the previews and the windows, you don't want that stuff happening for certain situations, especially in the studio if I'm going to be lighting with all my flashes. So I don't want like what that's going to show me through the viewfinder. I have to set it, you know, to be doing something totally different. So trying to make it look more like what I expect to see and hear. So yeah, but overall, even if like they had originally Canon was building the sensor and a lot of the features for the next version of that camera and then decided to put all their eggs in this basket with the new lens mount, and I don't think they're ever going to make the 5D Mark V. So if you're just looking at like if I had just bought a 5D Mark V that had that sensor in it and that like image stabilization, I would be over the moon because when I pull up the files, the improvement is just gigantic. And now over this last week, even since I went live last time, I've shot some events, I've shot some studio stuff. And when I get into the files to retouch them or to check out the dynamic range to pull it up, like the sensor, given like take away the mirrorless technologies I'm saying and all that kind of stuff, and just like the new sensor and processor versus the sensor and processor in this, as a nerdy photographer, it is amazing. Oh yeah. If you're a pixel peeper, the art like as Ben just said, been looking at the specs since we've been talking. If you are a pixel peeper, the R5 will ruin like anything you've ever shot with. I think um, outside, say maybe some digital high-end medium format, but in the form factor of this, and this camera is much smaller and lighter than the Mark IV, which is amazing. But in this kind of form factor, I think there's the R5 and then probably, a couple of the Sonys. And I really don't think they have competition right now. Nikon just put out the new Z6 and Z7 and don't think those are up to this standard yet. I'm not a Canon fanboy. I don't care what brand you shoot with what you like. And you don't need a fancy camera to even work, to even work as a photographer. But as a photographer nerd, if you want to like have that leeway and zoom in and edit, the R5 is mind blowing just on the sensor level. Take away the fact that it will follow focus me in this room by my eyeball. So yeah, that's what I'm doing here. Testing live streams and nerding out about cameras, nerding out about bike racing. One thing about bike racing I did want to talk about before I got too deep into any kind of comments and stuff is kind of had a cool experience on Sunday that I don't think I've ever had in like since I've been really into cycling. I grew up watching the Tour. My brother was into it, but as a American, the Tour was all we watched, right? So, even my dad paid attention. That's what we had on TV when the Tour was on, you know. But on Sunday, I had a couple friends over. I've got big space in the studio, and they're kind of people who are in my cycling bubble, anyways. And Aaron came over, and we watched the Tour of Flanders. It's on super early in the morning, but they came over for like say the last hour, and like the race was amazing and get into the weeds on the actual race, but it was the experience that I had that kind of related to when I used to watch, say, college football or something like that was that we watched the Tour of Flanders, watched the end of Tour of Flanders, we're all on the edge of our seat. And then since with the compressed UCI schedule this year, flipped over and watched the end of the Giro, which was a mountaintop finish, and like enjoyed that, and then flipped back over and watched the women's Tour of Flanders after that. And I don't think I've ever had that experience of flipping around between different bike races with people who were interested in watching bike races before. That was kind of a unique, cool thing that happened over the weekend. And then also the tour, yeah, watch out for the Moto. The Tour of Flanders happened to being one of the coolest races. Um, the way it ended with the two main cyclocross rivals going away with the probably one of the best road racers of the last few years, Julian Alaphilippe, was just incredible. And then Alaphilippe hitting the motorcycle, as Pete said, and then going down, and the two rivals who don't like each other looking back in shock, and then taking it 20K to the finish and finishing at a photo finish with each other. Just absolutely incredible race on its own, but kind of an incredible experience, or just something that probably people in Europe kind of used to, or probably definitely Belgium where the Tour of Flanders is happening. It's like multiple bike races. There's probably people pulling out their phone and being like, "What's happening in the Giro?" All that kind of stuff. But be here in Akron, Ohio, and with a couple people and being able to flip back and forth between different bike races is kind of a new cool thing to have happened. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing too with Vanderpool and Van Aert. I think I talked about this a little last week, and I would talk about with my friends. But I do. It's amazing how Vanderpool can just ride away from everyone. It's like it's a competition for second in the cyclocross season when they were both riding cyclocross, and Van Aert usually won that competition for second. But it was still Vanderpool was like nearly even lapping him. But then in road racing, how Van Aert has just taken to it so well, and then won monuments this year. Milan San Remo and Strada Bianca is not a monument, but a very everyone already is talking about it as the sixth monument. To go and beat like Alaphilippe and Sagan and all those guys in road racing um, has been amazing. Definitely, Van Aert has a stronger team. He rides for a World Tour team, whereas Vanderpool doesn't have that support in his road racing team. They're Pro Conti, but still, Van Aert riding in the Tour and riding on the front up the mountains for as long as he could is just he's turned out to be a phenomenon, and just so fun to watch. I mean, he does. I mean, reminds me a lot of Alaphilippe just with his attacking. I mean, Vanderpool does the same thing. It's nice to watch a bunch of guys who aren't just heads down on the power meter, like Chris Froome style racing. And nothing against Froome, he's the best Grand Tour rider of this generation, but him and Ineos and Team Sky are boring to watch. I mean, it doesn't take away from their greatness, but they're not exciting riders, you know. And Froome got dropped today on the first day of the Vuelta. He already came in saying he was supporting Carapaz, who won the Giro last year. And not surprising, Froome is just not. I mean, he had one of the worst, you know, accidents imaginable. The fact that he's even riding in a Grand Tour. I mean, you can't criticize the guy, but um, yeah, just yeah, totally dropped. And Roglic is out there winning again already. Hard to see anyone beating him. Ineos looks strong today, but supporting Carapaz and having a good team there to do it. But I'd be amazed if anyone beats Roglic in the Vuelta, if the Vuelta gets all the way to the end. Who knows what's going to happen. It'll be interesting to see what happens in this last week of the Giro. It's been a very interesting, for someone who no one expected to be leading that race. It's been kind of crazy. I really thought Nibali was going to come out of nowhere and stuff, not out of nowhere, but just edges way up and kind of take over, be leading it by now, and then he lost, but now a couple minutes behind, 3 minutes behind. So I'm going to say a couple other things too with the R5 that you don't hear talked about if you like go and watch a review or anything. It's just, and anytime you upgrade any camera you've had, like few years in a new processor, besides the image quality, is just some of the stuff like scrolling through images on the back of the screen. You just notice how much faster it is. More, it's more smartphone like now, where it just it just happens. There's not a delay and a rendering. It's just like I could spin that wheel on the back of the camera and they just go through. And then like the Wi-Fi, they I don't know what they call it. Like it went from they doubled it. It's like a 5 gigahertz, whatever you call the thing in it that sends it. Modem's not the right word, but so when I'm transferring images to my phone, just even that using the Canon app, just seeing the previews already like fully rendered, and then when I hit download, it's just there. Those little things that if you use make a huge difference. That now with cameras basically being computers with a lens attached, are nice to know that you have there to just make your experience better. It's like why we all get annoyed with our smartphones when they don't work quite right, and why we like the new updates when we finally get them. You're like, oh wow, this is much smoother and seamless. With cameras now for a decade being computerized, it's definitely like a noticeable upgrade just to switch to a new camera and have everything work smoother and faster. Is your Ben, is your 5D the original 5D? He was saying we were chatting earlier today, and he was saying how he got one of the Wi-Fi cards so he could Wi-Fi stuff, Wi-Fi memory cards over to his phone. But I've never used one because the first time I started trying to do that, I had the 6D already, and the 6D would already Wi-Fi like just from natively over to the phone. So I've never tried to use one of the Wi-Fi cards. So I don't know what the nuances of how they work. Oh yeah, that's right, the 5DSR. So it's the 5D4, but it's the super high megapixel version. And then the R means it's without the anti-aliasing filter, so it's even sharper. There's not native Wi-Fi in that 7D Mark II. Both those cameras don't have native Wi-Fi. They took that out. Oh, because well, the 5D4, I know they did something to the top where you can see there's a seam here, so it's plastic, so the Wi-Fi antennas function. Um, I would assume they wouldn't. I wouldn't have thought they would have changed that. Huh. I'll have to use the SD card thing. I would have thought the 70 Mark II would have had it, and they must have taken it out of the 5DS. And I'm trying to think of what the reason would have been. The need would have been. Maybe the transfer would have been too slow. Yeah, maybe with those massive files you get off your camera, the transfer for the Wi-Fi technology at the time would have been fast enough because, like I said, they doubled it, and because now it's 45 megapixels, and what yours is 50, and then also probably bigger raw files in general. They were a higher quality in some other way. If I hmm, that surprises me. It's a feature they would have taken off, but definitely with the 7D Mark II being like angled at sports photographers, I would have really thought that they would have had like Wi-Fi transfer built into that camera at the time it came out, especially with the 6D having it. But the 6D is very plasticky, and the 7D, maybe that's the difference. The weather sealing on the 7D, maybe they just didn't have it down yet for the Mark II because they were definitely like, that's a camera you could stand in the rain with. Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, it becomes more, yeah, because yeah, 70 Mark II, yeah, sports photographers and news photographers is the total angle of that. And that's where the Wi Fi stuff becomes so important. But I really do have to guess it's the Wi Fi thing. Just thinking that, or the weather sealing thing. And that's pretty seamless. You definitely see, I mean, seamless. There's a seam there, but there's nothing penetrating that, right? I can't wait to, so yeah. It's funny though, I killed my original 7D, not the Mark II, but I think we talked about this. Yeah, when I had this camera, I was on a vacation in Hocking Hills. Um, Ben, you probably know. that area. And day 2 of my trip, my camera just stopped working, and I was able to pull the batteries. And then I did some research on a double hard reset, and got to take a couple more photos, and it was just dead. Like I just actually wore that thing out from carrying it every single day and shooting nonstop. I used that right when I turned pro, but it was just like even as a hobbyist, it was went everywhere with me. Yeah, I had I had a film camera and a bunch of black and white film, and that's what I ended up shooting on that trip. But I was really bummed, fall colors and all that stuff, and no digital camera with me. Yeah, and I upgraded to the 60 after that, and really liked the full frame image quality improvement, but I hated the step backwards in body design. Because the 7D and 5D line are very similar. But back the 60 is very cheap and more like a XXD Canon. Never liked it. Never liked having it. When I got back to the 5D after the 60, I was like, that body style I like so much, which now I'm already saying feels outdated. Yeah, yeah, the 60 is a horrible. It's a horrible body. I still use that camera. That's what I take on my bike trips. Got some fruit flies in, but still impressed with the image quality, and it's so small. Or like when it came out, it was the smallest full frame camera there was. And now I have a 40 millimeter pancake lens on it, and I put it in my frame bag. Like when we're riding in New York, that's what I'm shooting with. Still love the images I get off of it. Like I said, it has the Wi-Fi transfer, but it is like I can't even believe it's lasted this long. It feels cheap in the hand. Um, which maybe is a benefit sometimes because I've never felt like I have to worry about that camera. Even though, I mean, I got it new, so I think what the body would have been a $2,400 investment at the time. And the thing I wanted was the 5D3, but the 5D3 was $3,500 and I just didn't have it. I was just starting the, I was full-time professional photographer, just starting the business, and I was trying to skimp on everything that was not necessary. And it wasn't. I didn't do a lot of video at the time. In the video I did, the 60 was on the tripod. Very stagnant video. Talk about a horrible video shooting experience. That's why I thought the 5D4 was so amazing. With the face tracking is not bad. It's not this, but you didn't know about this 3 years ago. No one did. It didn't exist. Even with the Sony's, I think, they weren't even doing that 3.5 years ago. I've only held the 5D3 once. Oh, it was right when the 7D was dying. I did a hard reset. I did get it to turn back on. That's right. And I had a gig coming up and I was paranoid, so I borrowed the 5D3 from a friend. I rented it. And he was like, "You don't have to pay me." And I'm like, "No, that's if I went to a store, I'd have to pay you." So I actually paid him and rented his camera for a couple shoots. Um, and then I went into Dot and bought the 6D. Um, but the body style was similar, right? Oh, I hated when it came out and the firmware fixed it. Yeah, because I remember the body style being almost indistinguishable between the 5D2 and the 4 are pretty similar. 5D4, the best thing they added on this was, in my opinion, this little button here. And I use that for ISO, so I could press that down, and the same button I'd use for shutter all of a sudden switches the ISO. And that problem has been completely fixed because basically when I'm shooting, there's 3 settings: shutter, aperture, ISO. But with the new R5, they have the control ring on the lens, and I have that set to ISO. So I have my, some people are going back to old school where it's the aperture, but I'm already used to the aperture being on the back of the camera, shutter speed, and then my other hand is here, so I get the 3, easy things I want to do. Oh yeah, the AF on the 5D3 was unpredictable, and that was better than the 6D's AF, but still compared to the 5D4, even that, yeah, I know that was a much older system that didn't have the modern dual pixel. Yeah, dual pixel is what changed everything. And Canon rumors just came out with a story that Canon is working on quad pixel, so it'll be able to actually um, track across the whole sensor in four whatever 4 pixel readout on every pixel. So um, people are already saying how amazing that's going to be. I'm also watching something else here. So when I get like a little bumpy on the table when I have my 5D4 here, I mean, you could definitely see that shake, but a little bit you don't because I have the sensor stabilization, in-body image stabilization combined with the lens stabilization. I have no stabilized lens because I used all fast primes and the 5D4 is not a stabilized body. But I've already been noticing like how amazing the stabilization is on the R5. I've shot still photos up to about a second, and if nothing's moving in the photo, everything will be clear. It is like unbelievable. Or I was shooting my brother's retirement. I could probably pull that up. Um, First event I've shot, and first event that's, you know, probably, I mean, the reason I went to the event is because it's my brother's retirement. But I was shooting some of the images at 105 millimeters. And so then I would have, with my 5D4, I would have wanted to be at like 1/60th of a second. With this camera, if there's no motion, I could be like 1/60th, 1/50th, 1/40th. And even with a 105 lens on a 45 megapixel sensor, there is like no handshake. It is just amazing what they are doing. Yeah, I see. I thought I didn't care about I thought I didn't care about stabilization on the lenses because I'm like the subjects are going to be moving, so it doesn't matter. Like, right, you're going to get motion blur if you go that slow. But I didn't, you weren't. I wasn't calculating the factor of using a really long lens where it's making up for that. Um, yeah, it's been so. This is a 24 to 105 I'm using. I bought the kit lens with the R5. But that's going to be the amazing thing now is when the adapter's back ordered and I got the one with the control ring. So when it gets here, now with the in-body stabilization, when I put one of the old L lenses on, it is going to be a stabilized lens. So yeah, and then video too. Now I just do way more video work. I've been telling people 2020, I've probably been 60 or 70% of my business has been video, which I never expected. Um, so now to have just that little bit where even if it's on a monopod or even if I was hand holding at this charity ball event the other day, and I know if I'm stable and I pan with a combination, it it looks good. It's even better for stills, but it's doing something for definitely doing a lot for the video. And the other thing is there's electronic stabilization on this camera, and I shot some video to test it over the weekend because no one has talked about it. So like everyone talks about GoPros and it's all electronic stabilization. And it seems like people talk when it comes to a serious professional camera, electronic stabilization will crops in, and that's the end of the world. This thing shoots 8K. Who cares if it crops in? You know what I mean? Doesn't matter. So I did shoot some video. I tested it out, but I haven't had the chance to look at it. So if this has anything near what like that adds an element for video, if it crops in, once I have my adapter, I have a 16 millimeter, lens that I could put on there. That won't matter. So yeah, so let me see. That's me. I handed my camera to my dad, and he was very nervous. And it's so funny when I hand one of these to someone, and they get all like, "What can I do with this thing?" They're like, they do like, it's like this is made to be tough. Just hold it and press buttons. But yeah, this is horrible lighting because they held it in a parking deck, and so they did have some LEDs, so at least it's kind of clear lighting. But you get the settings up here, so I could like one of the 105s that like this is my niece and nephews. So this is ISO 2500 f4 1/80th of a second at 105 millimeters, and it's YouTube live stream, so it's not going to look like it's looking to me on bridge here. But this is just a way I would not have shot my other cameras. And f4, I would have been going down to like 2.0 or something like that for that. And then again, dealing with 45 megapixels, so even just to be able to crop and not like and popping in like to my I like 5:7 aspect ratio, but even cropping in and cropping stuff out, and then I'm still like, this is still like a 4,000 pixel across image. It's just, this is my brother, anyways. It was retirement from military, so I think I said that, but it was my parents. This image, so there was a glitch in the camera and it shut down on me. It just like I went to take this when they all looked at me and it turned off. I pressed the button to turn back on. So it reset since I had it in a custom function mode to ISO 160. And so this is a photo that I took, and then this is all bumped up in Photoshop. And you can see in their pants, there's definitely noise. Um, like, pulling the loop up here, this shows 200%. There's definitely noise. But if you're looking at their faces, I mean, so they bumped up megapixels to 45, and then they increased the dynamic range a ton. And that is even more important to a photographer. I've talked about this before. Like, I'm a studio photographer, so I like the higher resolution because I need to get in there and retouch and all that stuff. But bumping the dynamic range is one of those things that is so underrated to hobbyists and amateurs, or people who aren't doing it at a level where you realize how much that matters. This is 160. I pulled this up 3 stops in Camera Raw Lightroom. So this is a 3-stop pull, and it still looks like this. I mean, granted, not perfect, but here when I'm back on track, like flipping that in between those, I mean, it's pretty unnoticeable. And this is something people are going to look at on their phones too, right? So Andrew just asked, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you have it on a tripod, you should turn the image stabilization off. Yeah, there used to be, and I think it's kind of like focus breathing, where cameras used to hunt and peck. That used to be told about video too. Like, you used to lock on your subject, then you would turn off the autofocus so your camera didn't hunt and peck for it. I think with the new technology, you don't need to do that anymore. I think that's an older lens stabilization issue. Um, so everything I've shot so far, leaving the stabilization on, even when I've had it on the monopod or the tripod, has not had an effect. And with my today, I was shooting studio shots, and I left it on, and I felt like it was even beneficial there, shooting at 1/100th of a second. That was the common wisdom, and I haven't looked up people who are smarter than me, but in practice, I don't think that's the case anymore. Wrong buttons, yeah. So I don't think you need to do that. I think like the in-body image stabilization is reacting to the way it's moving. Um, I think maybe if you're putting a cheaper or older lens on, it's probably better to turn it off. And I know they're working on firmware modes for this where the lens could have it off and the body could have it on. Right now, I think it's all controlled from the switch on the lens, but this is the lens that came with it, so this is definitely a modern design lens as well. You never turn it off, even on the older ones, the image stabilization. I do remember that being the thing people said for sure. Like if you're locking down on a tripod, turn it off. Like that's something you're supposed to do. I don't think it's the case anymore. Um, and then if you're saying on your 7200 you don't turn it off, then it's probably not an issue because you would definitely notice, especially at the resolution you're shooting with the 5DS, right? I am really noticing though, even though this is an L lens, it's a 24 to 105. I only shoot primes, like fast primes, like I said, like 1.4 primes. That when I zoom all the way in on something, there's a little blur, and I'm like, it's lens blur. It's not like the camera is out resolving the lens I have on it. So that's what I was saying too. I'm excited for when the adapter finally comes in. This will suit me. It's like this again, pixel peeping stuff that other people aren't going to notice. At the resolution they're looking at, because I'm already zooming into stuff, and I'm like, this is insane. But I'm just thinking like, if that was my Sigma 105-1.4 art lens, I'm like, that would just be that much more crispy. And again, not stuff that matters, but stuff just that, to a nerd, like a, an airplane flew overhead the other day when I was out shooting. Pull that up. I got the raw file. I haven't edited it, but just to throw the camera up and shoot at it, and to see the logo on the tail and all that with the 45 megapixels was pretty incredible. Okay, here. This is for reference. Standing on this bridge overlooking the gorge, some Metro Park gorge. An airplane flies over. I just point the camera up, go to 105. Again, this loop is showing 200%, not 100%, but you can see the logo of the airplane, the jets, the individual windows, and it nailed the autofocus. This is f4 1/1000th of a second, ISO 160. Just but locked on autofocus, no thinking. The discoloration being around the edges, that's actually the fence that I'm shooting through. Yeah, this camera's incredible. I it I mean, it's extremely expensive too. So I mean, it's 7200 MK1 didn't have IS, seems sharper than my now with IS. Huh. This is another feature. So to bump a camera up to 45 megapixels, increase the dynamic range and everything. The other thing is, so the autofocus I've already talked about, locks on the eye. Handed the camera over to Aaron on Saturday. This was our anniversary observed date. We're at JFB in Worcester, the brewery down there. And I said, I wanted to show her the frames per second, because this will do with the mechanical shutter 12 frames per second. With the electronic shutter, it'll do 20. I haven't tried the electronic shutter yet. I've never tried that. The mechanical shutter is so quiet without the mirror box. It's amazing. At my brother's retirement, no one's looking at me. You know, with my 5D4, it'd be like you're like savoring when you want to take the shot, right? There'd be those times when you're like, I want to take a couple shots, but like there's something solemn going on, or with the R5, it's so quiet. That's like a feature you don't often think about, but it's like barely noticeable. But so then with the 12 frames per second, I hand it to Aaron and I say, just hold down the shutter button and turn down the high frame rate. So this is what her holding it towards me. They hold it down, goes out of focus. Second shot almost all the way back. And she doesn't know how to use, my kind of camera in general. And so this is all within 1 second. So watch. I'm like, I'll wave my hand to see what happens. Still, it's not distracting it from the face. Still the face mostly in focus. A little thrown back in focus by here, which is, it can't even show me. It's a 10th of a second later, back in focus, back in focus. I mean, ridiculous. The fact that they can throw all that in, like there's Aaron. To up every level of quality and then also add like a sports factor to it, an action factor to it. With that speed, you think it's like, why would I need that? But when it's quiet, you're like, sometimes it's like, why not? Why not try and see what it can do when, that's something Rick, who bought the studio from, told me when I'm shooting a speaker. He was like, early on, he was like, you're shooting like a film photographer. He's like, you need to take more to make sure you capture that perfect emotion. But there's also that time, so say as you're shooting an event and someone's being handed the award, where now it might as well be like, put it in high frame rate. It doesn't mean you always have to hold it down, but to get a couple of the, to make sure, like that, like looking at my brother's retirement photos, there's times where everyone looks perfect, but the one person has their eyes closed. And then 2 shots later, it's like that person looks good, but the other person is looking away or or sneezing or touching their face. And it's a time where it's like, if it's a critical moment, you'd be able to use a high frame rate that almost doesn't make any noise. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm realizing there's a lot of things I'm going to do that I never thought I was missing, but will start, using. And that's why I was saying the custom functions and the I never set them up on this camera because I didn't need them. It's a DSLR, so you could set going around the dial with C1, C3. When you turn it there, everything that you have in the camera gets set to that. So when you turn that on, you could have an ISO and then any kind of weird feature the camera has. And I'm noticing that's really important with this camera. And I have two of them set up, and I'll probably dial them even more as I go on, and then figure out the third scenario. One is now the event photography thing where stuff's happening. I want to hit the person's face. I want the servo mode, so it's constantly tracking all that kind of stuff. And then the other is like my studio landscape mode. So a lot of that stuff goes away. And what I'm seeing through the viewfinder is a little different because it's electronic. So you can set that up however you want it. You could even set it off so it scrolls through less screens. I mean, it's a computer with a lens on it, like so all that stuff. So I need to figure out how I want the third one and then also dial the first two a little more. Yeah, oh, wildlife. Yeah, exactly. And also the idea, what you said with wildlife. So say you're just out for a hike and you think you're just going to shoot fall color. So I want the camera to be set up so it's acting more like the 5D, like single focus point, no tracking. But I also have what I'm seeing in the viewfinder now. I put up the histogram, a level. I have all that kind of stuff set up in the viewfinder. But then action happens where you want a cleaner viewfinder, and then you want all that animal because it actually has an animal eye AF mode, um, which has been amazing when I've tried it. But so say then you could just have a custom function. So when that happens, instead of 10 settings you need to change, you just flip the dial real quick and then you're locked in, and that deer or bird or bear, whatever it may be, then you're capturing that right away. And that's what I'm saying is a big deal on this camera. With the other one, I would have just been like focus, recompose, focus, recompose, focus, recompose. And now it's going to be like, no, this camera's made to do that on its own. Like, I don't need to do all that stuff, but I need to have it set to make it so I could switch between those kind of features really, really quickly. I think that's a big deal. It was annoying me a little with the R5 at first. Is like, how do I make it act like my DSLR? And that's because I just went out on a hike. But then when I went and shot portraits, and that's something you would think like maybe that's a time when I want it to act like that. Well, it turned out with that eye autofocus, now I could focus on like connecting with the subject. And a lot of times I was trying to have a conversation. So I only have 5 minutes sometimes. Like I was shooting doctors the other day. They're busy people. So it's like, but I want to make them comfortable enough so I get a good shot and bring something out of them. And a lot of times these are people who are like, you're the photographer. You tell me if it looks good. And I'm like, but I know later you're going to look at this when you're a little more chilled and you're at home and you're going to want it to be a good picture of yourself because it's going to be on your website. It's going to be the representation of your practice, your business, what you spent years in medical school for. And so I'm trying to connect with them a little bit, ask them how long you've been at Unity Healthcare, blah, 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 blah. But I'm also so focused on like the features in my camera and making sure my DSLR is focusing on their eye. And sometimes I get back and I'll true professional photographer thing, the best shot is not 100% in focus. And I go with the second best shot. So it is one of those things where I just did it for the first time the other day. Pegs. So here's one of the portraits I shot. He has glasses on. There's a tiny glare on the glasses, everything. But it just took out that guesswork. Like I did not have to think about the autofocus. There's one less thing. And it doesn't make me less as a photographer because my lighting is what's making this a good portrait. His expression is what's making this a good portrait. Just took out yeah, the skill of autofocus. None of us shoot manual focus anymore. Like I do when I shoot black and white, but I'm not shooting fast stuff like this. And just amazing to have that be a factor that is not something that's going to come into play anymore. It's like, you know, guy ran out and grabbed a coffee and then he hurried back in. There were raindrops on his glasses that I actually photoshopped out. But I had that moment to beg, holding the camera and being able to connect with him as a person instead of like thinking like, and that recomposing throws people off. I've had people ask me about it when you have only a number of focus points in your, DSLR and you do the focus on the eye, but this is where I want the shot to be. And even the higher resolution plays into that a little bit, where you don't need to be as precise, because definitely with an older camera, you want center of the lens, much megapixels as you can get, but rigid subjects were hard to shoot. Yeah, I think that's something people aren't some people don't think about is the idea of having better autofocus for stagnant stuff like a portrait. Um, Definitely in the studio shooting like product photography, less important. I want it off. I don't want that. I don't want that on at all. It's stuff I can't. There's things that are not released yet for Earthquaker devices. But yeah, with something like this, I want it to react a little more like a traditional DSLR. But the thing that's great that I figured out, which I just found out and it's blown my mind, and I was showing everyone last week, is with the, let me go back to, if you would pretend this is the R5, they've made it so you could pick part of the, that focus is so good. If my face isn't there, it won't not focus on it. But you could pick part of the touchscreen to be a focus pad. So when you have the camera up to your eye, instead of using the joystick, you are actually able to take your thumb and move it around the part of the touchscreen that you've selected, and that is moving the focus box and just nailing the focus wherever you put it. Um, Again, another thing that I haven't heard people talk about too much yet, and that's why I probably didn't know about it. I watched a video where a guy went through every single menu item on the R5. That's where I found out about it. Like, that's, I hated the 6D because it didn't have this joystick. And then when I got this camera, I loved it for the joystick. And I was like, oh, good, this one has one, because I know the Canon R didn't. But now it's almost already, unless I'm going through menu options, which you, even that, it's all touchscreen, so you don't need it. But this new thing where you could just focus like that is just killer. I mean, just another thing that's mind blowing. Touchscreen autofocus, yeah. But for portraiture, I'm telling you, with the R5, you don't even need that. So you could select the focus point where it starts on. You could have it just fully auto and it just goes to the eye no matter what. I've set it up so far, and I think I like it where it starts in the center. But when I do get a portrait and I turn the camera sideways, it's like a quick flick of the thumb. It locks on the eye and it's there, and then I don't second guess it. I mean, I'm only second guess it because I'm only 2 weeks in on it, but from doing those other portraits, I knew it was like spot on. Um, the other cool thing, definitely the flip screen. I'm hoping it's durable. That, is a, that was one thing I never wanted, was a tilty flip screen, because I thought it would ruin the integrity of the camera. One thing I already love about it is the fact that you could turn around and flip it closed. So when the camera's in your bag, the flip screen is not exposed. I already like that. But then I shot a video last week where I had the camera up on the tripod, and these were stagnant shots. They were all going to be like, there's a number of shots that we're going to all edit together. There's no camera motion. But I had the camera out of my sight. Um, so to have the camera where I couldn't quite see it, there it is. Like, this is me actually holding the 5D over my head to get this shot. But yeah, I have the flip screen tilted down because I'm below it while I'm standing there, and then I could change the settings again, just touch screen there on the back. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It really is amazing. It really is as good as I think. I think my qualms in a month I won't even consider. Like I said, picking up the 5D4 last night, I was like, this is a fossil, you know. But yeah, stuff like this, it's just absolutely unbelievable for this. This is a video I'm working on. We're going to edit on Thursday. Also, by the way, I probably won't be live on Thursday because we're going to work on this video. So I filmed it all, as you can see here, with the R5, but I took, again, having two nice cameras now is amazing. So I took the 5D4 out of my bag and got some still shots. Why I trusted the R5 not to mess up. It was locking on his eye in this factory. This is the old Carter machine shop or machine company in Akron. It's an abandoned factory. Really creepy. We're filming this and we'd hear like wind blowing and noise, and we're like, "Is someone coming in here?" It's gonna make for a really cool video. But again, this gives you a look. So like the back of the camera looks pretty traditional, just smaller because you don't have the mirror box, and then being able to have the screen flipped out like that. Um, oh, another thing, one of my negatives is if you see that bar right there under the viewfinder, so that's the sensor that knows when your eye is up there. And there's a couple ways to set this, and I think I need to look into it a little more. But when your eye goes up, then the screen goes off. Like say you had it in the normal position, and then it goes to the electronic viewfinder. Sometimes though, when I have the screen in the normal position, not flipped out like this, and I'm trying to zoom and scroll and use the touch screen, my hand, the sensor sets that off and the image disappears. At first, I thought I had a firmware glitch in my camera, and then I realized what was happening. So that's one frustration. And I guess you just get used to always holding your hand below there. We'll see if it just becomes natural and you don't think about it anymore. But yeah, look at this place. Isn't this place amazing? The little Bob Dylan thing there behind the scenes. By the way, all my Adobe programs updated today, and there's some amazing new features that I've just kind of dipped my toe in, but they're making my computer run like it is trying to process eight threads of 4K slow mo. It is like my fans are running in the background right now, scrolling in Bridge, which I'm hoping this is some kind of bug with the graphics card that they work out. Oh, you'll be heading to the ride on Thursday, right? Andrew said, "Well, I'm so far behind 10 years since my research into new DSLR technology. Might as well be 100 years." Yeah, well, that is how it moves, right? If you think about like a Nikon F that came out in like the early 60s up until, you know, an F3, which I think is the best manual focus camera ever made. Um, that's still like a minor leap over 40 years. But yeah, the last 10 years, but yeah, last 10, I mean, how old is the 5D Mark IV? Because I think dual pixel autofocus was a huge leap forward. And then taking the mirror out, which Sony really is the ones who got that ball rolling, is the next leap forward. But happens very quick. It's definitely the way more of the modern age timeline than you know, seemed like other things were happening quick and they weren't. But what they think of the SRT 101 Minolta camera that came out in 65, and that was still the camera they were selling to consumers in 1977. So, yeah. Now pro cameras move at about, what, 3 years for an upgrade. This piece I want to go back and grab if it's still there. It has the name of the factory that we go. I have a video where we rode our bikes through this factory, and that's why I knew it as a location. But this mold for machining stuff, I love the colors here. So yeah, and this is with the 5D4, which is, again, live stream is not going to show this, but it's still a brilliant photo. Look how cool this place is. Just keeps going and going. Trucks in here, cars in here. Yeah, so this is the one shot that I think is going to be awesome. It's going to be him in this expansive place, and I have it really square and all that. This is Buddy, who was directing, and then Hannah, who helps him run his recording studio, and he has a whole studio space. Robert, Electric Eye. Look them up on Instagram. I'll link them after. As the process photo I did for Instagram. So these big sheets, these tarps, when we were recording, those were kind of blowing in the wind, which looks awesome, but that's kind of the noise that was also spooking us the whole time. 5V3 is about 12 years old. Yeah. Yeah, Sony, like it was funny because they were kind of like felt like they were kind of making like these flimsy cameras, but I was always kind of envious as a Minolta guy because so Sony's camera, probably you guys are a little nerdy like me, but Sony's camera division is Minolta. So Sony at some point, you know, Minolta merged with Konica, so Konica Minolta, but then they sold off their Minolta still exists, but they're like a corporate Xerox type company. They sold off the camera division. Sony's who bought it. So the Alpha, the A series originally was Minolta's, technology, and Minolta was kind of dropped out of the pro business even in the early '80s. But they were always the leading edge of autofocus. So Sony kind of took that when they bought that department. They got all those great autofocus engineers and kind of ran with that. And they kind of killed off that original line as they went into what are their, cameras now. Um, I know there's a term I'm missing there, but those two, the division in there, the Alpha and the whatever, they changed lens mounts at some point, and then the old Sony users were pissed and whatever, but it clearly was a huge benefit because now they've been, you know, they were eating Canon and Nikon's lunch for so long, and I think they're still eating Nikon's lunch, but then Canon finally was like, we need to get our shit together and stop making decisions in the boardroom and let the engineers make the decisions. See what we could do. But yeah, Sony really pushed the envelope, and I think they've made the industry, the cameras, way better. I don't think I wouldn't be filming on this camera right now if it wasn't for Sony. It's 100% due to Sony that the Canon R5 exists. Alphas and Lumix, yeah. And then so yeah, Panasonic for when it comes to like this form factor for movie video has still been a huge thing. I know people, what is that, the GH5, new one, the SH1. I can't hold all these terms in my head, but I do, keep up on it. Or like killer like video spec. Um, I'll be interested to dive into this more, like what I was showing you, where I was filming that video. That was just 1080, fairly stagnant. I'll still export it, 4K and all that stuff. But I can already tell the video is sharper. It's definitely an upgrade even at 1080. But this camera shoots 8K raw, which is my computer couldn't, honk on that no matter what. But the 4K 120, I'm excited to get into, try some of that, kind of slow motion stuff. Because if you watch my cycling videos, I love the, you know, 4K slow mo on the GoPros, and then to have like full frame readout for that, gonna be incredible. What time is it? How long have I been rambling? About 10 o'clock. Man, if you guys haven't been to Magic City, any of you, or if you could get this anywhere near you, Tinfoil Hat Society, they just make the best. Some of my favorite hazies. Um, Sorry, Kenny. Missing Falls makes great beers too. But when it comes to the hazy IPAs and having a bunch of them, and then even like their kettle sours are awesome. Like way more mellow, not overboard sour. I mentioned that Kent, since we didn't get to do Oktoberfest this year, last year, look at that face and knows it's, I have it set on face, so stay focusing. No parties, no fun. So got the Oktoberfest class out. I actually shot a virtual Halloween party for one of my favorite parties to photograph of the year. It's so fun because drunk people in costumes, you're in a costume, is pretty much the best gig in the world. As a photographer, I love it. It's just a blast to shoot the Halloween charity ball. They usually have it at Tangier, and we were doing a virtual video on Sunday. And I, again, second time I've used this, but I haven't edited the footage yet. So be really interested to get more at see how it. And 10 Eastern. Yeah, it's interesting too. To in the cycling world, I was just thinking of times that this morning, like turning on the Giro because it's last week, and oh, it's the first day of the Vuelta, and I had a photo shoot, so I missed the end of both of them and had to go back and watch them. Uh, with that, I have to use two different apps because Flow Sports is what I use for like the Giro and a lot of the monuments. And then I use the NBC Sports Gold for the Tour, uh, the Dauphiné, and would should have been Paris Roubaix, but would have been on Sunday, got canceled. So yeah, having them both going on at the same time is kind of crazy. I wonder how. I would love to know what the cycling community in Europe, like, what their reaction is to it, because as we all know, the U.S. like sports reactions have been pretty subdued. Thought maybe it'd be hyped because people are looking for anything, but I think the ratings are way down on U.S. sports. Love to know in Belgium, like how are they doing? Like Tour of Flanders, you weren't allowed to come out as a fan. Like so, unless that was like your house that happened to butt up against the course, you weren't allowed to be there. Uh, Lesion or Lycian space dust. I've never known exactly how they want that pronounced. I always say Elysian. Yeah, if you just jumped on, you didn't see it. Me and Aaron were at Magic City tonight. We had our anniversary dinner. We got a 4 pack of one of our favorite tinfoil hats to go. So I was like, well, you got to let me grab one of those for the live stream. She has some of my beers in her fridge from Worcester on Saturday too. So we'll make it even. We won't make it even. I'll still drink most of the beers up. But we'll make it even as we ever do. I'd be interested if you're still there, Ben. Does the because Aaron said the sound was much better. Does it? I've gone back and watched some of the live streams, and they've been like the last few are like really mushy, and I'm like, how did you ever understand what I was saying? So I'd be interested if you thought this new setup sounds a lot better because I put my headphones on and to me it did, and Aaron said it did. But I'm trying to think if I did queue up any of this new footage. What happens if you watch your own live stream while you're live? Oh, it's delayed. That's weird. That's hurting my eyeballs. Shotgun's much better. Good. Inception. Yeah, I'll go this route from now. And it's better too because then I don't have to worry about what I did with the wireless. Just more comfortable to have the mic over here and not have to worry about cords and stuff in my pocket. If I go wireless, then I'm worried about battery power and all that. I didn't put the pop filter on, so when I go back, I'll listen like pop. I'll go back and listen if that's often a little too high, and then I'll put the little filter on there so it keeps it from popping. I still have that on the. Yeah, I actually haven't rode my bike since last Wednesday, and this is probably the longest I've gone without riding since I hurt my back in June. I've just been so busy with work. Um, and then we had shitty weather the last couple days here in Northeast Ohio. I think it was raining a lot in Columbus too, right? Yeah, that's right. I'm not standing right on the mic like when I do a video. I would have it pretty close. Yeah, so this is tomorrow when I get out. Hopefully, it looks like the weather's going to clear by the evening when I go to ride with my little group where we do exploring and riding. So I'm hoping I'm still slammed with work. I have all this stuff to shoot in the studio and a lot of editing to do. Some hard deadlines on some editing first thing in the morning. And then hoping to knock out a couple studio things. But I was hoping to even get out earlier and put in like 10 miles before I met up with the group. Because sometimes with the group, we do a lot of exploring and don't necessarily get a lot of miles in, even if the riding's hard. I know that doesn't matter, but still matters to me. I like to get my 120 miles a week type thing in. But yeah, last week, probably 60, and I haven't even been on the bike yet this week. That's really weird for me. But one, I don't ride in the rain, but it really is more that business has been so good, which is great. And make hay while the sun shines because I never, working for yourself, you just never know when I have 2 weeks where I'm working on my portfolio on the website. Or COVID in March, the reason I started the Got started, but got back into the thing in the first place is because I had nothing but time. I was, let's look at a couple, hanging out, a couple more R5 photos. So these are unedited raw, and that's what's amazing about. So like a photo like this, like I would be able to bring way more sky back into that. Like if you use photo Lightroom, the dehaze filter would do wonders there. I really like this, part of those birch trees with the white branches and the leaves colored up like that. I know I'm gonna be a great edited photo of the plane I showed earlier. I was really going for like stay like highly contrasted images like this. I was thinking like to crop in a little bit and have that black behind this leaf where the light is just hitting this leaf. I posted some of these to Instagram and I edited them on the Lightroom app on my phone, um, which isn't ideal, but I also always think if they're going to be seen on the phone and you edit them on the phone, then maybe you are doing your best work there that way for. And I would never show this stuff in real life, show everything. There would never be two of those. There'd only be the one. But even this, yeah, I love this light. And I'm surprised with this lens being an f4 and I'm shooting it wide open. So I guess everything should be round. But if you look, those bokeh balls are pretty rounded. Experimenting going back to this, yeah, this. Look at how the light's hitting that, but it's not hitting the tree behind. To me, that's kind of like a perfect scenario to do something unique with fall, right? One, you could take a pretty picture in fall almost any time of day because the sun's already low enough in the sky that you're never getting that high noon sun. But to find something like this, like with a contrasty, interesting thing, is bridge is always one of my subjects. But it's just way more of a cool thing to do. Like try and do something that at least gives some kind of unique look to what you're doing. Well, especially as someone who's I don't expect to make money on these, but a professional or someone expects some kind of perspective from, right? Same with that bridge. I've shot this bridge a million times, but shooting it at 105, like with this angle. So that's the bridge between Cuyahoga Falls and Akron over the Cuyahoga River. Some experiments, those not horrible, but nothing worth editing up, playing around with it, things. I really like these for some reason. So it was just tried a number of exposures. These are down on the some leaves that had fallen in the dirt, but the light was just raking across the red edge. Yeah, good, but right for an f4 lens. I mean, and I thought this was look at that like weird oily bluish look that the white balance kind of pulled. Tried a number of exposures and angles with it. Look at this lens too. Look at that crazy flare it got. Like, I wouldn't consider that good flare, but it's interesting down at the bottom of the screen with that round ring and the rainbow. This is a shot that would have been like to stop all the way to, or stop all the way, go up to f22 and get the like flares would have been kind of cool. Yeah, this is one. These ones ended up getting one I really liked that I actually edited. I did that on my phone, so it won't be edited. And look at me now, like already thinking. So here's how I normally shoot it. Then here's like, oh, if you're gonna post it to Instagram, you got to go portrait, right? So you could do the 4x5. My brain finally getting used to the fact that people are going to be looking at stuff on a cell phone instead of on a nice big screen somewhere. But instead of being a curmudgeon, if you want to be good at whatever you do in life, you adapt and you move forward, right? But I think that is like funny because like that's my preferred shot, and this is the one that I'll edit for the phone. This is the one I'll edit for my Flickr and blog stuff. Yeah, right. That flare looks almost fake, right? I mean, think of throwing the dehaze filter on there and bringing the blacks all the way down. How intense it's going to look, and how much even around like the sun, the rainbow effect is. Sorry again when I talk, and to go through OBS and then up to YouTube, the delay. When I was looking at the countdown, it was showing it being a minute, but I think now from looking at the YouTube, it's closer to 15, 20 seconds. But behind the scenes of what's going on there. This is the one I edited for my Instagram, like the main on my not cycling account, but my photo account, and I just love it. So yeah, it's show. Whoops, yeah, that's not good focus. That's not the good perspective. There we got it. There, double check the focus. You know, yeah, then to edit that and make the blacks be black, bring out some saturation because I shoot very flat, raw profiles. Yeah, I'm really happy with that image. Walking back on the other side of the bridge. This one I really like. This will be a fun one. I'll edit this anyway. This is just a tree, two trees behind the used car lot. So there's a couple different kind of maples I think going on there. A sugar maple taking on the orange and whatever the maple is in the back, but how it almost looks like one tree. Then me and Aaron's trip down to Amish country. Yeah, definitely. People are gonna look at phones. Like that's the reality. It's you don't fight it, you adapt and edit a photo as good as you can for the phone. You could still do your other stuff. You could still, if you want to be an artistic photographer and you're going to hang prints, yes, take it both perspectives. Take it this way, take it that way, and why not? It's deal with the reality we're given. The people who don't change and adapt, when everything went digital, the guy who owned the studio, he said he had clients who were like, we want everything digital. He's like, yeah, we scan everything. We'll give you a digital file. And they're like, we want it digital beginning to end. And when he heard that once, he was like, he went out and he bought a phase one for his phase one back for his RZ67. It's like we're not gonna we're not gonna be like I'm too young to retire. We're not getting thrown away. We're gonna adapt and like deal with what the reality of the industry is. And I think that's doesn't make you sell it. It makes you smart. Yeah, down here alerts just don't. This too again like with the R5. Look at that. Look at how much. This is like what time do they have? Two. Love those. Like keep the blacks out. This is unedited, you know. So I could pull some of the detail back out of those white powdered sugar donuts, drop the black wherever I wanted, or pull it back up. Twister, what I was showing, I was kind of messing around with the autofocus. I was actually kind of trying like touch the screen, like get it to focus on the spots I want. If you have it on face priority, it is going to lock on the eyes. It's not going to let you mess around. So that's why I was saying the custom settings are so important. The phone allows for more mistakes to go unnoticed. True. I do like a philosophy that Rick told me early on. He was like, though, if you do a better job at every step of the way, you're already ahead and your images are going to look that much better. And I even still think about that with the phone because sometimes, a lot of times, most times, even when I post to Instagram, is still shot with one of my higher end cameras. I still edit it on this desktop with two monitors, to the best. So I'm getting the best shot I think I can, editing it to the best ability I can, uploading it to the cloud in the resolution that I think Instagram's going to take the best, and then putting it there. So I just, he always said if at every step of the way you do your best, you're that much farther ahead than someone who wouldn't do that. And I still think that's kind of a good philosophy, right? To always do your best work. There are times where you don't let, what is the expression? Don't let whatever, I can't think of it, perfection get in the way of getting it done. Yeah, I mean, there's time to stop and, put stuff out. But there's a brewery down in Amish country, Bully Pig, which is amazing. It was interesting. It was a mix between locals and people like us who would be like whatever you want to call it, beer tourists or, but see, most people are wearing their masks. The guy in front of us who we ended up talking to is the local who no mask, Trump supporter, plays the lottery. I learned a lot about his life, by the way. Standing in line with him twice as he spewed COVID all over me. But a beautiful spot, a fun place. So I have a video. I think I'm gonna. I haven't looked at the footage yet. I shot a lot of slow mo on the the R5. I'm gonna see like if I edit that together, what it looks like. Look at this. This is Aaron shot directly into the sun, and this is the raw file. So no processing. Like I've been saying, this is all just the raw files on Bridge. Look at her black jeans. Look at her skin tones. And then look at the sky, how it still has blues in it. I'm just thinking, you edit this file, like the raw file has this much information without me pulling anything out of it. Like, you know, you don't need this camera, but this camera has some benefits. You know, this again shot into the sun. So I know I could pull the red back out of that barn in the background. And I think I could put the sky back. Like, I'm not talking about sky replacement. I'm talking about the sky that's there bringing like the blues, you know. Again, not fake stuff, what it looks like to the human eye. Because when you're standing there, you see that as a red barn and you see that as a blue sky with the sun in it, right? So just getting it to the reality of what you saw, which is kind of the way I edit landscape photos, you know. And then, of course, yeah, how is she not a shadow, right? How is she not a shadow? Or how is the, or the other thing would be, how is the sky not totally blown out? That is dynamic range for days, you know? Yeah, then we're down here at this place. Like, this is an hour and a half from Akron, I believe. We took all country roads out. It took 77 almost directly back. Um, Two of our friends happened to be down there. So I already had my camera out for the beer shots or these crowd shots. And then it was like, holy shit. They went and grabbed his, yeah, they were smoking over here too. They have these little cool like spots so you could isolate in the little pod type shelters. Yeah, he grabbed his wife, all like hung out and sat around till the fire. Like again, these totally underexposed. I'm walking away with a little bit of buzz. I wasn't the one driving. Thank God. Uh, but I know how much detail from now working with this camera a little bit, I will be able to pull out of those files. So yeah, to basically it's like you can now HDR an individual file without even making layers. You know, just using the filters and I use Camera Raw. I always say Lightroom because I know most people use Lightroom, but it's the same exact. Um, the behind the scenes engine that's doing all the work is the same engine. It's just a different skin. Um, but yeah, just to adjust the global sliders. And then today in the update, they added like the color grading wheels, which I think I'm going to use a lot as I've gotten more into video. I really like going into the darks and knowing exactly how I'm going to manipulate them. All stuff you could have done before, but I just think having that like kind of panel that does a little of the video workflow when you want it, your photos to look like that is going to be a unique thing. And I don't color like Peter McKinnon or like the popular YouTubers, photographers who really like to stylize stuff. I don't do that. One being a commercial photographer, the designer wants that. They want a fairly clean file. I send them a high quality and I edit it. I do all the edits that I want on it. I retouch it. I put the color I like on it, but true to look color. And so then if they want to drop filters or add a look, they can do that. And I kind of carry that through even my hobbyist stuff. If I want a way more creative thing, that's when I shoot my film cameras. But you know, that's my opinion. I also think a lot of that. I'm nothing against him. I watch his videos. I like him, Peter McKinnon stuff. I think it's going to look dated. It's going to, you know, when you watch a Green Day video from the 90s with that whatever filter they put over the cameras they were using then, you're like 1996. That was filmed in 1996. Like you need to be trendy, current in anything you do to a point, but when you overwork it, I just feel like it's like you're losing some of the timelessness of photography. And so uh, that's my philosophy, and maybe that's why I don't make it in the arts and I'm a commercial photographer. I'm really rambling, but I'm right. Well, like I said, I don't I won't be able to be on Thursday. Between I think I'm gonna be working, and then God fucking damn it, I'll probably put on that stupid debate if I finish in time. Um, Usually I like to avoid that stuff for my own personal sanity, but I'm probably just have to watch the shit show like everyone else because it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable that this is where we are and this is what's happening. But yeah, so hopefully live next Tuesday. I think as far as the channel goes, hoping to get done enough to do like the photos I was just showing, put up a video with that kind of stuff, the woolly pig stuff, our little Amish country trip. See what the R5 video looks like. I don't know if it'll be like a packaged musical thing or maybe I'll do a voiceover talking about what the quality look like. Kind of like saving that for the live streams. You know, only us nerds, if you want to deal with it and watch it, you can. Not like on the main feed. Yeah. It's going to get harder and harder to do my videos on Wednesday night because the sun sets earlier. You know, I like the one that I posted from last week. We had just enough, we had this perfect sunset. And our friend Mike from lives in LA just happened to bring all those firecrackers that were fun to shoot in slow motion. But yeah, it's gonna make it harder. Maybe I have to set up some Saturday rides because I still like making the ride videos. They're just a fun thing to do. But it's just documenting. We're having a good time. I'm only pulling out the camera when I want to capture something, and you put that little mouth adapter so you could just throw it upside down in your mouth and still be riding, and I could still talk to everybody. Yeah, I enjoy this. I'm glad you guys hang out. Like I said, I do it to teach myself how to push buttons, but it's way more fun when I have friends to hang out and talk to, like cameras and like bikes. So yeah, we have this little tiny corner of the internet where we do those two, well, bikes, cameras, and beers, I guess. Right. Anyways, I still have not made the end screen to sign off. Have go to something, so I am just going to sign off like I have been by saying, I don't know,